Get your head out of your ass. Raise your hand if Jim Wagner ever said that to you. Keep it up for a minute. Keep your hands up. Quote, you're not as dumb as you look. Hands up. If your hand's not up, you're lying, because he either said it to everybody else, or he thought about saying it to you at one point, or you didn't hear him say it to you. Those are probably the two terms that not only his family, but his baseball team members, and I'm sure his fellow servicemen years ago heard quite a bit of. Sounded like he was being mean, but I don't think it really was. Get your head out of your ass. He just wanted you to hit the cutoff man in baseball, or turn a double play the right way, or point your left foot towards the catcher if you were pitching. He already told you to do it a couple times. He just wants you to do it right, finally. You're not as dumb as you look. Sounds mean, doesn't it? It's really not, unless he's actually insulting your looks, because you can't be as dumb as you look. Quote, I'll give you something to cry about. You crying?
Oh, yeah.
My boys, if they're here, running around somewhere, they heard this one, but they knock it off. Or what do you want? Every time the last 5-6 years I would bring my boys to visit great grandpa out in Franklin Park, he would greet me with, what do you want? Well, Veronica or Maurice told him I was coming over. He knew what we were doing. I wanted to take you to Buffalo Wild Wings. One that kind of touches the heart, told me maybe 12 to 15 times every time I hung out with him these last few years was, don't ever get old, Jim, because deep down inside he knew what was happening to him, but just didn't want to get old, didn't want to, for him to experience what he was ultimately experiencing. So my wife and I, we have our two oldest, our boys, and they're 15 months apart, 14 months apart. He would always tell me when she was pregnant with Isaac, Jim, you couldn't have waited until Lisa got out of the delivery room? Another one of my favorites is whenever we go out to lunch or literally be in any public place, he would go up to anybody and say, I bet you don't know anybody that has seen the Cubs in the World Series. I was right there with him. I went to Game 1 in Cleveland in 2016, so I had to actually I never interrupted him because he was either making somebody's day or scaring them quite a bit. He would go up to any person at any restaurant. If they had any sports hat on or sports shirt on, he would approach them and ask them about that. Turn the light off. Close the door. Something I quite religiously say to my boys at home quite a bit, and to my wife. Another classic. How you doing, Gramps? He would reply with, compared to what?
So true.
So when we were younger, they had a place up in Wisconsin, a campground that not only his children, but his grandchildren and great-grandchildren would go up and visit, Grandpa and Grandma on the lake. We would drive by a jail. If anybody remembers Jeffrey Dahmer? We drove by Jeffrey Dahmer's jail every time we went to this campground. He would yell out, hey Jeff, who did you have for lunch? And one of our family's all-time favorites, please reply if you know the answer. Oh my God.
Yes.
A couple quick anecdotes and I will pass along the microphone. I was 7 years old, 6 years old. I was getting out of first grade. And I planned a road trip with my grandma and grandpa. Hopped in a motorhome, didn't think twice about driving a couple thousand miles out to Oregon and Wisconsin, or through Wisconsin and Minnesota up to Oregon and Washington. Because all I wanted nothing more than to just spend 2 weeks with my grandma and grandpa. You're gonna ask my mom and dad, like, did I call home once during that whole trip? I just wanted to eat Doritos and salami sandwiches and too many Dr. Peppers and Cocoa Puffs and Trix all day long. But we went up there, I saw Mount Rushmore, Old Faithful, we saw many different lakes, and it was quite an experience. When I was younger, on a weekend, all I wanted to do was go hang out with my grandma and grandpa. I remember distinctly the Jewel brand Chef's Kitchen frozen pizzas. My grandma would sprinkle a little oregano on it, and that's just a distinct memory I have in my head. The fancy salads my grandma would always make, the fish fries on Friday night, only with the fish that we caught out of Mason Lake, the Dairy Queen, the breakfast. He would make us Belgian waffles, and like I said, give us that Trix and those Cocoa Puffs. Baseball. Well, probably 3/4 of the people in the room here tonight, or have visited so far, or would be visiting, are memories and legacies and people that he met and influenced by playing baseball. 53 years, I think one of these things says up there. 53 years of coaching baseball. I'm only on like my 3rd year. If I can get half of that far coaching baseball, or be 1/4 of the baseball coach that my grandfather was, I think I'm going to be pretty decent. So much of an influence on the community that they even renamed Joyce Park in Franklin Park, Coach Wagner Park, and there's a few memorials up here regarding that. If you saw his trophy case at home, you'd see the countless trophies in his cabinet, dating back to what, the 60s? 70s and 80s. If you were a member of his baseball team, you held up one of those trophies and celebrated the championship with him, because you know what? He taught you how to do it the right way, and to do it the right way at a young age, whether it was pitching, pointing your left foot right at the catcher, hitting your cutoff man, getting the tag down right, turning that double play, or catching and throwing it down to second base the right way. Growing up playing sports, baseball and basketball, my sister's can attest to this as well. Even though he was a union guy and getting up at 4 in the morning to get to somewhere in suburban Chicago to do some electrical work on top of a Walgreens, he got there at 5 in the morning so we could get off at 3 in the afternoon to get to Hanover Park, to pick myself or my sisters up, to get to these baseball practices a little bit early, to throw you batting practice before the game, to try to give you a little bit of an edge. Well, the edge didn't really work for me because I didn't play through high school. I'll wrap things up here. This is where I lose it. The impact he's had on myself and my boys, the relationship he developed with my boys, his great-grandchildren, the way Colin and Isaac looked at great-grandpa, the lunches we had with him, the hugs they gave him, the countless Buffalo Wild Wings lunches we had. If I can be that good of a grandpa or a great-grandpa, like I can be a fraction of how well of a coach he was, I'll be a pretty good grandpa. I coach basketball and baseball not only because I love to do it, but because he did it for most of his life. And again, if I can be somewhere near as good as he was and touch a fraction as many people as he touched, I will have done all right. Oh, I did it. Thank you all for listening to me for a few minutes here. If you have any questions about my relationship with him, I could talk here for another hour because he meant that much to me. Just come get me before the end of the night here. At this time, I'll invite any of his family members that would like to.
We're going to do the Marines right now.
Okay, even better. We have some wonderful guests here.
Daddy, hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. Why? Why?
The United States Marine Corps, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved ones' honorable and faithful service.
Thank you so much.
Daddy, I'm thirsty.
Can we clap for that? Oh, that was beautiful. If any family members would like to step up and share some words, please do so at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Mike Feldman. I'm the youngest grandson of Jim Wagner. And as I like to say, I guess his most disappointing grandson is because I did not follow in baseball or basketball. I did fish.
Fishing, yeah.
I'll touch on that in a little bit. Growing up, my grandfather always tried to push me to do baseball. Even until I got into high school, he goes, "Michael, you have the pitcher's body. You know, you could be in the major leagues if I taught you." But I enjoyed picking grass out in outfield and looking at random things flying to the sky, so I guess I wouldn't have been that good. I wouldn't be able to hold my focus on the mound, I guess. That being said, my grandfather, you know, he told it like it was. You might not like what he told you, but it might be the truth. And maybe you just need to have a little bit more callous skin. That being said, you know, I'm a 6-foot tall white boy doing gymnastics. Now most people in gymnastics are short and stocky. I'm tall and lengthy. And he would say, "Michael, you're not that good of a gymnast." Even though I was on varsity, and I knew I wasn't that good. But he would say, "Michael, on the other hand, you are a good wrestler." And to actually get that compliment from my grandfather actually meant something, as most of you know that if he was your coach. Because if he complimented you on something, he actually meant it. And that, for me, was something that really I held dear. Another thing he complimented me on is the fishing. I grew up fishing with my grandfather. We'd go on trips down to Missouri, down to Arkansas, Run Lake, up to Lake Geneva, and up to the cabin or the campground to Lake Mason. He always would take me out, and we'd fish from sunrise to sunset. And we'd have a little radio, and our grandmother would be like, "Jim, Mike, you need to come in, it's time for lunch." And my grandmother would be like, "Oh," you know, and we'd cruise on in, and we'd have some lukewarm SpaghettiOs and a horrible Red Bull that most of my cousins know what I'm talking about. That over the time, the carcinogens probably leach into our bodies when we eat that food, so they warmed it up in the microwave. So, then we'd go back out and we'd continue fishing. And that was very fond memories for me. And my grandfather always told me, you know, Mike, as we were out on the boat one time, he looked at me and said, Mike, you are a fisherman. I am not. I'm out here just wasting my time. So, to me, I take that as a compliment because he goes, you know where the fish are at and you know how to catch them. And till this day, I like to think I have knowledge, but I'll never be as good as him because he taught me everything I knew. Whew. Okay. Thinking through that wave. Trying to think of some funny stories of my grandfather. One time, we were at Oberweis. Me and my now wife, Katie, were having ice cream. And there was a very large gentleman standing behind me in line. He was probably about 6'7", 6'8", very muscular. And me, I'm 180, 185 maybe. And my grandfather goes, hey Mike, how big do you think that guy is? And I look at him, I go, I don't know, Grandpa, maybe about 270, 280. He goes, oh, okay. We're sitting there, I'm eating my ice cream. My grandfather turns around, whacks the dude on the side, and goes, hey, my grandson thinks you're 280 pounds. And this dude just turns around and looks at me, and I'm like, oh, that's okay. I guess I'm going to get in a fight and snap in half. Okay. So I look at the guy, and he looks at me, and he smiles and goes, well, your grandson be right. I'm like, woo! We laughed and we joked it off. I'm like, thanks, Grandpa, you know, I see you get my butt kicked, that's great. Other times we'd go out to dinner, you know, and my grandfather being a coach, he loved coaching young kids and just, you know, young adults in general. And he could never not go up to a young person at a restaurant. And I felt so awkward because how do you tell a mother with 5 kids, all ranging from a newborn to 6 years old, that this old man is not trying to be creepy and pet their child like they're some kind of animal? And I'd try, he'd be up there like, okay, Grandpa, let's get away and let them enjoy their ice cream while he's trying to feed them ice cream, you know. Love my grandpa, but man, those are some awkward turtle times. My grandfather, you know, as you know, he had a lot of funny sayings, and every time I'd see him, I'd say goodbye to him, and he would say, adios, kid. But his favorite was to do this to me. He pretended to be fixing his glasses, and he'd do that too as I walked away. I have lots of fond memories of my grandfather. I learned a lot from him. He was a great, loving grandfather. So, thank you, Grandpa, and out of the likeness of it, I'll just give you one last one.
Hello, everyone. It's a little weird using that microphone. I don't think it really helps that much, so I'll just talk right here. I'm Paul Feldman. I'm grandson to James Wagner. I am going to miss my grandfather so much. There are so many memories I have and so many things that I will remember about him. But I think some of the most important things are his honesty. Always telling the truth, what he really believed. Even if you didn't want to hear it, he would still tell you what he had to say. And that's really, really hard to do. Because sometimes it's not always politically correct. Sometimes it might not be the thing that people want to hear. But sometimes it might be the thing that's best to hear. I'm not as athletic as my brother, Mike, and my grandfather would always point that out. He'd say, Paul, you're not an athlete. And I'd say, thank you, Grandpa. Thank you very much. That really means a lot to me. But he would always compliment me. I think it was a compliment. And he would say, Paul, you know, you're pretty weird. And I'd say, thank you, Grandpa. I was more interested in art and theater and those other weird things. But I think that my grandfather, he always encouraged me. He always came to my shows. When I wanted to go and study abroad in Japan and travel, my grandfather was always there to support me. And he was really interested to find out what I was going to be doing next. The other thing that I'll always remember about my grandfather is his dedication to his family and friends. I think that my grandfather was always there for us. He was always there for our family, and he was always there for our friends. And he told me towards the very end, I was talking to him, and I said that, that I try to spend as much time as I can with my family. And he told me that being with your family and spending all that time is something that you're never going to regret. You're always going to appreciate that time. So I will look up to him, and I'll remember him as a great man and a great grandfather, and I miss him so much. Love you, Grandpa.
Kelly Wagner, well, now Aldous is my wife, and so she wanted me to get up and improvise something here on the spot for her, but on behalf of her as well too, because I know this is hard for her. But one of my favorite memories when I met the grandpa, we were over at Kelly's house over in St. Charles, or her townhouse when I just first started to date her. He walks up to me, he's like, "You're a big guy, but I'm an ex-Marine, and that's my granddaughter over there." So I think that was the first thing that he said to me. He was like, "Great to meet you. Yeah. I'll take care of her." And so there's a lot of great memories I had of him and us being together, going over to their house, and some of their Christmas shindigs over there. I remember one time they convinced me to be Santa. I think it's because they think I'm big. I think that's the theme in the family, But so so they had me dressed as Santa Claus, and I'm coming in there and giving all the presents in there, and I just remember him smacking me on the butt with his cane the whole time. And so it's just like different things like that. He was always in it for the laughs and stuff. And I think another fond memory for Kelly and I is the campground up there as well too, and getting the opportunity to kind of go up there. And again, he was past the time when he was able to go up there, but it was being up there and just seeing those memories that I knew were deep for Kelly and Megan and Jimmy and Mikey and Paulie. We were up there a few times as well too together and painting the golf cart. Remember that when we did that? And Penny kept saying, "Man, Grandpa, if he could ever see this, he'd be proud," because we painted that like the Sarge, red, white, and blue. We're spray painting a golf cart, up there. So, but I think one of my favorite things about him, and I know it's because like with his hand, he had a little bit of like arthritis and stuff like that. But I just remember every time I would shake his hand, and I'd go to let go, he would still hang on, And I think it's just because he always just wanted to keep shaking my hand, just wanted to hang on, And but he was just, even though he had that rough exterior, he had that really gentleness inside. And I know that he loved all of you grandkids. And one other favorite memory I had is we came out, Kelly and I, and we'd taken him out to Olive Garden, which is one of his favorite things. And we wanted to treat him for something. It was his birthday or something like that. And I paid for it. And he pulled me aside afterwards when we were walking out, and Kelly didn't hear it, but I was just in earshot. He was so frustrated at me that I paid. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, You save your money and take care of my granddaughter. I've got money, and next time you pay, I'll break your back. I was like, all right. So, Marine, yes, sir. So, anyways, he'll be was greatly missed, and it's been great to see how much he's touched all of you guys in the family, and me as well too. But it's just he's a great guy. So thanks for letting me speak. I hope I did you honor
Hey, Mommy.
Want me to go after you?
No, go ahead.
And I gotta keep it together here, but thank you, everybody, for coming on out today. You don't know how much it means to me. And my father, I'm sure he's up there looking at this going, oh my God.
Yes.
There you go. Some things about my father. He cared about his family so much. Both my mom and dad. They were always there to support everything we did. I was a musician. I'd go out and get a regular job. Now, they travel over the country following me where I played. You know, who would have done that? Or just with everything like that. They supported us so much. He was always there for us too. I'm thinking of one thing here. We had a house in Hanover Park, and we decided to put an addition on it. So it was a ranch, and we put a second story on it. We had the builder come out and frame it and side it, put the windows in, put the roof on. And it was my job to electrical, drywall, plumbing, and finish it off. He was out, Jimmy was talking about how he would work all day and come for baseball and stuff. He was out every night to help me after work. And he'd be there till 10 o'clock, we'd be working. This went on for a few weeks. And who would have done that? You know, I mean, you might have come out and helped a couple days, but he was there every day till it was done, and it was just amazing. Always supported us, was always there for us. A lot of you have heard this story. I got to tell a funny story though with him. Not all of you have heard it, but I was living in Bensonville. Well, let me start it out where my brother Mike, the Christmas before, had slipped him a joint for Christmas. Well, he put it in the freezer. He told him it'll relax you. Okay. So he put it in the freezer until he thought he needed it. So come summertime, I get a call from my mom. Get over here! Your father's having a stroke. And we get out with her, and the paramedics had taken him away. He's on the ground. He smoked the whole joint. They took him to the hospital, kept him overnight, and they couldn't find anything wrong with him because they didn't test for that. They tested for everything else except that. So those of you who know my father wouldn't think he smoked the whole joint there, or even had a puff off of a joint. It's okay now, you know, but when I think of him and you think back at the story, we laughed about it a lot there. They couldn't diagnose what the heck was wrong with him, so my big mouth is doing this. But anyhow, I gotta read something to you guys. And hopefully I get through this. This is a letter he wrote me. I scanned it when I was 6 months old. He was in Korea, wrote the letter, and sent it to me. And it goes as, "Hi, little buddy. I'm writing you a few lines to wish you a happy 6-month birthday and talk to you as one man to another. You're a little guy now and pretty young, but in a short while, you'll be scamping around, getting into everything. Then in another short while, You'll be going out playing with your little boy friends and fighting like the devil with most of them. Naturally, you'll win them all too, because the pop will teach you how to defend yourself. Your mother will probably start getting some gray hairs, which she did, because all the guys' mothers will be over complaining about what a little something you are. That won't be true though. You'll only fight for the things that are right. Or your mommy will probably make me fight with you. Then in a little bit later, you'll start to go to school and really give your mommy and Ann a hard time. First of all, you'll probably kick up a storm because you don't like it and want out. You'll get over it after a while, but then you'll start playing football. Yeah, that didn't happen. I got the heck beat out of me. You remember. Because you don't like it and want out. You'll get over it in a while, but then you'll start playing football. Then your mom will worry about you after the first time. You come home with a bloody nose from some guy's foot happening to knock you a little. There'll be quite a while that you don't give anyone much trouble. But this won't last too long too. You'll start high school and probably get girl crazy. You want to be a big shot. The way you think you can prove it to the gang is by starting to smoke, swear, drink, etc. But don't ever think that way, because there are many guys who have been fooled by thinking that way. Of course, you'll play in all sports, and you might be the smartest one or more, but if you can't be a star, you'll still give it all you got. From the time you start getting wise guy ideas, which will be something during high school days, you'll be a constant problem for not only your mother, but for your dad too. You'll be sassy, you'll say things just to hurt us, but no matter what you say, we will still love you. And as much as ever, because we know in a few years, you'll be old and mature enough to realize that you're sorry for everything to hurt us. Try to be a good boy growing up. And man, as you have it, been a little boy, baby, if you're going to be, you can't miss. Remember forever, we love you so. Your proud Pop. And he was in Korea when he wrote that to me. I don't know if I was still in California. I was actually born at Camp Pendleton, the Naval Hospital, and my mom lived and they both lived in Oceanside there. So, yeah, she kept a baby book, and I found that, and it really brought some tears to my eyes. But there wasn't a better person on it. You might not have liked what he said to you, but it was said, he was always honest. You never had to think what Jim Wagner was thinking, because he would tell you. He didn't whitewash anything. Thanks, guys. And thank you so, so much for coming.
I don't need that microphone either.
That's for sure.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to honor the memory of my father, James Arthur Wagner, otherwise known as Sarge. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jim's youngest child and his only daughter. I was named after both my grandmothers, Grandma Sense and Grandma Esther. Because my mother's name was also Sense, my dad knew there was going to be some confusion between Big Sense and Little Sense, so he nicknamed me Penny. Okay? I like to say my father coined my nickname. So let me begin by telling you a little about my father. He was born on July 15th, 1930 to George and Esther Wagner. He was the middle child of their 3 sons, Vern, Jim, and Jerry Wagner. He started dating my mother when he was just about 16, 15, and she was 14, 15, a year younger. The story goes he asked her if she wanted a lollipop kiss. She closed her eyes and puckered up, and he said, "Sucker." Why in the world she fell in love with him, I will never understand. So in 1950, at the age of 19 years old, he got married to my mom. And at the age of 21, he was drafted and became a Marine. He went to boot camp out at Camp Pendleton, California, where my brother Jim was born. Soon after, he was shipped off to Korea to fight in the war and served as a radio operator. He returned home after serving for 2 years, and they bought their home in Leiden Township in 1954 for $10,500. In 1955, my brother Mike was born, and 5 years later, I was born. So what was it like growing up with Sarge as your father, you ask? Challenging. Imagine every day of your life being boot camp. That pretty much sums it up. As a little girl, I adored my father. I remember being little and we'd come home late in the car and I would purposely pretend like I was asleep so that he would carry me in to bed. I think he got wise to me after a while and he would wake me up and tell me I could walk in myself. And speaking of waking up, imagine a drill sergeant coming into the barracks and blowing reveille. I much preferred my mother's technique of singing Good Morning from The Sound of Music. So growing up, I guess you could say I was a tomboy. I would try to do things with my mom, like cook, but she would just push me aside because I wasn't doing it right. My father, on the other hand, was a much better teacher coach. So I went everywhere and did everything with him. I was his little shadow. If he went out to the garage to work on the car, I was right there. I learned how to change the oil and tire, amongst other things. I was also very athletic, which made my father very happy. Probably the most athletic out of the 3 kids.
That's probably.
Unfortunately, I grew up before Title IX. And because of this, I was not allowed to play most sports. So my dad used to take me with to all his baseball and hockey practices. I could practice with the boys. I could field balls and practice batting. He showed me how to pitch too. But when it came to game day, I got a hat but not a uniform, and I had to be the bat girl. I went to his hockey practices. I got to take slap shots at the goalie while he practiced with the other boys. But once again, I could not be on the team. And then in 1972, at the age of 12, Title IX was passed and my life changed. Leiden Girls Softball was formed. The girls had a horrible field that we were supposed to use and consider a field. It wasn't actually a softball field, it was just a vacant piece of land with, it was very uneven and actually dangerous. I remember one day my dad was hitting fly balls to us girls because he helped coach. The women in the neighborhood, they had no softball or baseball experience, so even though there was a woman that was the coach, she didn't know how to teach us. So my dad came to do that. And he would tell us, in order to catch a fly ball, you need to run on your toes. The first ball he hit my way, I'm thinking, run on your toes, run on your toes. So I ran, and bam, the ball hit me on the forehead. I think my dad felt a little sorry for me. He came over and looked at my head and told me I would be okay and to get back out there. Remember, there's no crying in baseball. So he hit another fly ball to me, and I ran, thinking, run on your toes, run on your toes. And again, bam, right in the forehead. He came over, I was not crying, well, because I wasn't allowed to, but I was obviously in pain. He said, okay, I think we've had enough for today, and we went home. See, he actually showed some mercy to me. See, the thing about my dad was that he was always there for me, just like everybody else has shared that he was there for them. I knew I could always count on him. As I got older and started playing sports in high school, he was at every game cheering me on. Probably more like coaching me from the sidelines. He would oftentimes be the only spectator at my games. I could hear him scream, "Drive the baseline!" Sometimes it was embarrassing, but he was always there. One time, I jumped, miraculously, because he said I never jumped, to get a rebound, and I came down on somebody's foot and twisted my ankle, and he carried me off the court. And when it came time for college, he took me around to see if I could get a scholarship to play basketball or softball. He was so proud of me when I did just that at George Williams College in Downers Grove. But after 2 years of college sports, I knew I wanted something different. I couldn't live my entire life to please my father. I came home in the spring of 1980 after my niece was born. I went to the hospital, saw the postpartum unit, all the nurses running around, and they were not wearing those ugly white caps, because that is why I did not want to be a nurse in the first place, and said, I could do this. And I saw the doors to labor and delivery, and I was like, I want to go through those doors. I want to see where the babies are born. And so I told him I wanted to become a nurse. I needed his support because my parents paid my tuition. He was disappointed in me, but he gave me his blessing. I don't know about your family, but in ours, we didn't say I love you. You should know that your parents love you by what they did, is what he told us. His grandchildren would tell them they loved him, but I don't know if he ever told them that he loved them back, because that just wasn't him.
The end.
My father taught me a number of things, important things. Don't kick a guy in his privates. Guys will tell you they love you just to get in your pants. But probably the most important thing he told me that shaped me into the person I am today was, Penn, you can do anything you really want to do. Meaning, put the effort in and you will go far. And the thing was, I believed him. What a boost to my confidence. Thank you, Dad. As I got older, I met Paul, my now husband. We've been married for 33 years. At one point I said to my dad, so Dad, you never told me what you think about Paul. He thought for a moment and said, well, you could have done worse. Wow, that was a compliment coming from my dad. Because he could have said he thought he was a real asshole.
But that would have meant he liked him.
No, I don't know about that. So my dad was known for being frank and honest. Honest from his perspective, which was not always my perspective. And because I am my daddy's girl, and was frank and honest right back at him. Which didn't necessarily make him happy. Oh well, what goes around comes around, Dad. And I suppose this is why his other nickname for me growing up was Big Mouth. In his opinion, children should be seen and not heard. But unfortunately for him, he heard a lot from me. I was my parents' legal power of attorney for finance and health care. And as my parents grew older, they weren't able to care for themselves independently anymore. Fortunately, they had taken out long-term care insurance, which I highly recommend for all of you in your 50s. Paul and I have ours already. And so we hired caregivers to come in and help with my parents. We have a number of them here with us tonight. Home Instead Senior Care, if anyone is looking for care for your parents, they're wonderful. And I honestly don't know what I would have done without Veronica and Larice in these past few days. And I don't know, Miss Yvonne is here with us also. And Richard from Home Instead, he's the person you need to go talk to. And I'm just gonna mention Marvin too, because that's Veronica's husband. And they're all like family to us. We just adore them. And so In the beginning, it was just a caregiver for 5 hours in the morning and then 5 hours in the evening. Their long-term care insurance paid $20 an hour, and it was $100 a day limit per person. So it was for free in the beginning, $100 for my mom in the morning and then $100 for my dad in the evening. But after my mom passed away in 2014, it became clear that my father could not stay at home by himself. And this was because of my dad's Alzheimer's. We worried that he could get into the car and just drive off somewhere. I know there was a time where he literally was gonna, I think, drive out to the tax guy, but he kept going straight down 294 and almost ended up in Indiana before he realized he had missed a turn. And fortunately, he realized this. I had actually a tracker, an eye tracker, that he carried in his wallet with him so that I would know. It would send me alarms if he went out of his zone. And we finally had to take his license and his keys away from him. So there were things that I had to do over the years that he was not happy with me about, and he would say not so nice things to me. So now I would like to take some time to tell you what Alzheimer's is. Alzheimer's is a disease. It's a type of dementia that causes problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. Symptoms usually develop slowly and get worse over time, becoming severe enough to interfere with daily tasks. My father started probably having memory loss in his late 60s. He took medications for it, but there were about 4 different ones he tried, and he had side effects from them, and so eventually we took him off of everything, all of those, knowing that it was going to progress more rapidly. Alzheimer's worsens over time. It's a progressive disease where dementia symptoms gradually worsen over a number of years. In its early stages, memory loss is mild, but with late-stage Alzheimer's, individuals lose the ability to carry on a conversation and respond to their environment. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. On average, a person with Alzheimer's lives 4 to 8 years after diagnosis, but some can live as long as 20 years depending on other factors. People with memory loss or other possible signs of Alzheimer's may find it hard to recognize they have a problem. Now my father, he knew he couldn't remember things and it made him sad. And like someone else said before, he would say, "Pen, don't grow old." A typical visit with my father would go like this. I'd come in, I'd say, "Hi, Daddy-o." He'd say, "Hey, kiddo, what do you want?" I'd say, "Just come to do your pills and bills. Come sit with me out in the kitchen so we can talk." Dad, "So, what's new with the boys?" He remembered I had 2 boys. That was good. "Well, Polly is still working in advertising like Mike did. My brother was in advertising." My dad would say, "Oh, that's good. He married that Japanese girl, right?" And I'd say, "No, Dad, he married Sunwa. She's Korean. And Mike, my other son, he's working for Cook County Forest Preserve in the fisheries department. He got your love of fishing." Dad, he still lives down the street from me, right?" "No, Dad, he bought a house in Franklin Park. He's never lived down the street from you." "Do you have any grandkids yet?" "I have one, Polly and Sunwa. I have a daughter named Eva, and another one is on the way." "And how about Mike? Does he have any kids?" And now, this was before Mike was married. I said, "Well, he isn't married yet, Dad." "So what? He needs to get going." Oh boy, do times change.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. That never would have happened with Paul and I. And this is how it went every time I went over there. Over and over and over. But you see, I understood it was the disease causing this, and so I just tenderly answered all of his questions. And at times he would ask me a question that I had already answered 5 times just minutes prior. And he would realize it and hang his head and say, "Pen, don't ever grow old." At Christmas time, I would get all the Christmas cards for all the family members and for the caregivers, and I would put one in front of him and put the pen in his hand, and I'd say, "Okay, sign your name." what's my name? He couldn't remember. At first I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He couldn't, I said, Jim. Oh, and he wrote Jim. So I would have to tell him what to write on each of the cards. This one, write Grandpa Jim. This one, write Dad. Okay? But not everyone understands what Alzheimer's is. It got to the point where we couldn't take him out to dinner anymore because he would get up and go sit at another table and start talking to complete strangers, especially if they looked Asian. He loved to talk to them about serving in the Korean War. I would have to get up and go over and apologize. See, this is the thing with Alzheimer's, inappropriate behavior. As you know, my father was a very social person and absolutely loved interacting with kids. He was unsteady on his feet and needed a cane. My father, whoop, and here we go, here's the cane. Hey, wake up over there.
Remember when I was...
Wake up over there. He was unsteady on his feet and needed a cane. My father also had a sense of humor. And one game he used to love playing with his grandsons, poke him and look the other way. And then they'd say, hey! And he'd say, what? That wasn't me. Right? Did he do that to you? Yep. He also thought it was hysterical to talk about all the hot chicks on Mannheim that wanted him. For those of you that don't know, Mannheim has hookers. Hookers. Yeah, the hot chicks. So we would all shake our heads in disbelief at some of the inappropriate things he would say. But that was Dad. I certainly hope that if anyone was ever offended by the things he said or did, they would understand that he was not the same man with this disease. And it is a brain disease, just like a stroke is a brain disease. With a stroke, you can't control your speech or maybe your movement. Same with Alzheimer's, there are certain things you just can't control anymore. As I told you before, I went into nursing, much to my father's dismay. I became a labor and delivery nurse and then went back to graduate school and became a certified nurse midwife. I take care of women throughout their lifetime, including pregnancy and childbirth. There are different stages that women go through before giving birth. We sit with them, we encourage them, we massage them, we tell them how awesome they are and that they can do it. A person who supports a woman during labor is called a doula. A dear friend of mine said that I was my father's death doula. There is so much in common between the two processes, only in reverse. A child is taking its first breath versus a person taking their last breath. Our family sat vigil for 4 days, Saturday through Tuesday. We shared stories, we laughed, and we cried. We held his hand and stroked his arm. Eventually he was unresponsive to us. I whispered in his ear, Daddy-o, I love you. I know you don't want me to tell you that, but I do. And I know you loved me by what you did for me. We had set up hospice on February 14th, 11 days prior to his passing. What a godsend they were. They came out anytime we needed them. As a nurse, I watched his vital signs. I watched as his blood pressure went from 130s over 80s, in the beginning to 70s over 40s, till finally no reading at all. I watched as his pulse ox went from 80s, 90s, down to 20s, 30s, and finally no reading at all. I listened to his heartbeat in the 90s, strong and regular, until it became very irregular. And finally, at 11:03 p.m., he took his final breath, and I listened to his chest with my stethoscope, and it was quiet. Per his request, we dressed him in his Marine Corps attire. We found, my son and I went up into the attic during those 4 days, and we found his green wool Marine Corps jacket from when he was in his 20s. He had lost so much weight at the end there that he was actually able to fit into it. We had his red Marine Corps t-shirt on and his Korean War veteran hat on. He had black dress pants and his black dress shoes. I put a hanky and some toothpicks in his pocket because he always had a hanky and toothpicks with him. And we lowered the flag out in front of his house to half staff and folded his Marine Corps flag that had been flying out there, and we placed it in his arms. Our family's mission is completed now. I hope we have made you proud, Dad. But unfortunately, I'm sure if you were here, you would find something that we could have done better. Let me finish with a poem with a few edits that another friend shared on my Facebook page with me. You can shed tears because Jim is gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and pray Dad will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he left for you. Your heart can be empty because you can't see Grandpa, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember only that Sarge is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind and feel empty, or you can do what he would want. Smile, open your heart, love, and go on. Dad, I love you. Say hi to Mom and Mike for me and give them a big hug. Don't worry, we will carry on. We would like, if there are any friends of the family or anybody else that would like to just come up and say some words. Dave? Something? Okay, I got a question. How many here are somehow related to Westdale baseball? Either he coached you, or you coached with him, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay? And that's only some of the people because some people have left already. Anybody that wants to come up and share a memory about his impact on you?
It's hard to follow that. It's beautiful.
That's okay. I'm going to come sit back over here where it was.
I'm the most emotional person that you're ever going to see up here. He wrote some notes in case you recall. So, I do think I was the first person, 9-year-old, that ever addressed him as Sarge. And the eyebrows went up, looked around.
Eyebrows.
Get out of here. I remember that pretty clear. On one of my visits a couple of years ago, he confessed to me. He goes, I want to apologize to you for being too tough, gruff, and aggressive for a 10-year-old, to a 10-year-old. And I said I never noticed. But we all know what he meant. Whenever I watch or talk baseball, I think of Jim or Sarge or Mr. Wagner. Baseball and Jim Wagner are synonymous for me. I can never go to a ball game and not think about it. I wanted to thank Jim and Penny kind and understanding and thoughtful because I rambled and I put all my feelings onto Facebook as they come. Jim Wagner is the finest man I have ever had the honor and privilege to know. He taught me how to be a man. Peace be with you, Jim.
Ricky Johnson, are you gonna come talk too?
Yes, Penny. I know all the dark secrets. Because Penny was about this high, Mike was about this high, Jim and I were about this high. But my name's Rick Johnson, and I consider myself the adopted son of the Wagner family. And the reason why was baseball, started there, but my dad was my first coach when I first started at Westdale. I actually started a year early when I was 7, because I had a late birthday, so my dad snuck me in. And then, I think it was when I was 10, my dad was not really gonna maybe move up, but actually Mr. Wagner, and that's what I always called him. Mr. Wagner came over to my house and said to my dad, you know, I like Ricky to play with me. And you can coach, because in those days, if the coaches were, whoever the coaches was, their players were on the same team. And so this way, I got to be on the team with Mr. Wagner as my coach, and that's when Jim and I became best buddies. Even though I didn't go, he went to St. John Vianney and I went to Westdale, grade school. We still were like best buds growing up for, I don't know, from about 10, 11 through high school. And until he went on to be a musician and I went on to be whatever. But 2 stories, at least maybe 2 stories. But I can also attest to Penny because as some of you may know, maybe you don't know, but in Jim's backyard, Mr. Wagner's backyard really, he had a backstop that was like a real backstop. And 3 different mounds for the 3 different levels that you would be going through as you got older and older and older. And Jim, and I would help a little bit, but Jim was the master of groundskeeping, and groundskeeping I should say.
I still stripe the yards.
Yeah, he still stripes the yard, it's crazy. But we would play baseball in the backyard with the 3 mounds, and we usually were pitching from the middle one, because that's about the age we were at, 12, 13. And with you get for a quarter at the drugstore, you could get the rubber baseballs.
Light and drugs.
And light and drugs at Derry Wolf and Grand Avenue. And we would play fast pitch, because Jim's dad said, nothing of this wiffle ball, it screws you up. Because you know you could throw the crazy curves and your timing would get off. He says you don't play wiffle ball. So we did fast pitch with the baseball. And Penny, even when she was like this high, she always wanted to come play with us. Of course, we couldn't let Penny come play with us. But we always just said, when you get a little bigger, But, so we did that all. I mean, I basically lived at their house, in all honesty, for 6, 7 years. Went on vacations with them and had a great time. And one of the stories where, I know to some of you guys, Sarge was really rough, but he wasn't never rough with me, to be honest. Jimmy was Catholic, I was that other religion. And so when I was with Jim and Penny and everybody, we'd always go to church, when I was on vacation. And I for some reason, I had these fainting spells. And every time we would go to the Catholic church, you get down and up, down and up. And I wasn't used to that. And I would get dizzy before the service ended. And Jim thought it was hilarious. He would just wait till I started turning white, start sweating, and he would just bust out laughing. And then I'd have to sit down. So one time we're going to Hayward, Wisconsin on vacation, and Jim goes, guess what? It's a Catholic holiday this week, and we're gonna go to church 3 times. He just loved to torture me. So, first Sunday we go. I didn't last 15 minutes. And I got so I'm ready to faint. And Jim's dad always, he was really kind to me. He would take me out, we'd go sit on the porch because it wasn't air conditioned. And he'd sit on the porch and he'd put his arm around me and he said, "You okay, little buddy, you okay?" And I say, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. And I could hear Jim laughing in the church. But as each part of that week, I got a little longer and I almost made it on the last day, but I didn't. But every time Mr. Wagner was there to take me out and take care of me. And that's why I always look at him as my second dad. And he also, when Jim and I would get into a little trouble now and then, and he would always reprimand us, but from my point, I guess the story where I laughed the most, and I can never remember who it was, but we were playing hockey in the winter. So in the winter, we always played hockey. Jim would freeze the backyard. We'd have nets, and it probably wasn't half the size of this room. But we had lights, so we could play at night. And one time, one of our guys, and I always think it was John Severe, but it wasn't John Severe, who got the puck in the mouth.
Hubert Green.
Who?
Hubert Green.
I don't even remember. Well, Jim's dad would come out and play with us half the time.
But his mouth, remember my mom almost fainted.
You're right, and I was going to get to that. But this is the funny part with his mom and dad, because I guess Hubert Green took one, and I don't think I did it, but I don't think it could have been. He took a puck in the mouth and bit through his lip and his tongue, and he was just like bleeding like all over. So Jim's dad was always I'm going to do this. He packed a big thing of snow and stuck it in his mouth, so it would like stop the bleeding. And so we go into the house, and Mrs. Wagner had like a little breezeway, and she was coming down the steps, and he spits this thing out. It's all red, and Mrs. Wagner just about fainted. Her eyes went. She thought he had spit his tongue out. So it was like, and the rest of us were kind of started. We laughed later, but at the time it was kind of serious because he was bleeding pretty good. But again, they were always so compassionate. I was in a rock band with Jim for many years until they kicked me out because I wasn't good enough. But we had a lot of fun and a lot of good years together. And again, when I needed it, they were there for me, and that's what I remember most. And so, Penny, I was glad to see you got to do sports. And now, actually, for the first time, I realized one time, and I think it was like 72, I was over at Westline training. I used to run. I turned into a runner. And I was over there working out, and I was inside the school, and I was heading out, and I saw Mr. Wagner. And he immediately came over and said, "How you doing, Rick?" Oh, blah, and I didn't realize. And then later I'm going like, why was he over here? And now I know why.
74, because I was a freshman in 74.
Okay.
So it was probably then.
It could have been then. It was sometime in that early 70s. I think I was still in college or just out after that time. But and he was over there doing his thing like he always did. He'd tell me all this stuff. So from my point of view, Mr. Wagner was an awesome guy, as his wife was. And it's a sad day for all of us, but like I'm sure all of you, all the generations that have happened since then, it's like I shake my head because I remember when it was way back when. This is the early 1960s I'm talking about, and 70s. And so he's left quite a legacy for all the people in this room and many, many, many places all around the country, I know. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
You go, girl.
Good evening.
I'm good. I'm
Need a stool?
no. Condolences to the Wagner family. I don't have a cheat sheet, so I'm just gonna do this from the heart, okay? Just bear with me here. I'm not gonna make it here. But anyway, I had the pleasure of taking care of Jim. I'm the caregiver. My name is Laurice Renee Skiles. And Jim had a very special personality. And you really had to understand him to really get along with him. Understand he ran a couple of them off, but not me. He did. But anyway, you know, I'm like Penny, I struck back, you know. So we understood each other. I called him my buddy. So I would come in and, what's up, buddy? And then a couple of times, I'm in a really good mood, I'll come in, I'll give him one of these. And he says, you're using the wrong hat. But anyway, Penny touched on the Alzheimer's disease. And it's amazing how he could remember way back then. He would tell me the stories about his mother, his grandmother. He would tell me, and then couldn't remember from one minute to the next. I'd tell him to do something and it just wouldn't kick in. And you know, all the years I've been working with Jim, he never called me by my name. Couldn't say Laurice. But it was okay. I understand how he did at the end. He called me by my name. And anyway, he told me to come here. He gave me a hug and he told me thank you. So, it's my story I'm sticking to.
My name is Bob Wisniewski. My condolences to the family. I've been a good friend of Paul Feldman and Penny for years of high school, but I just want to kind of express, just to let you know how he has touched generations. So I'm an example of, I moved to the neighborhood back in 1969, and my mom died, and my dad had to take care of the kids. So I had the opportunity to play boys baseball at Western, and played for Coach Wagner at various levels. And he was like my second father from that aspect. I didn't always get to play on his team, but he was always an inspiration for me. And ride my bike from the Fullerton area to Joyce Park and really grow. I wasn't really big at the time like I am now. I was small. So, I competed at a level that I could, ultimately to be able to be on a few of his tournament teams. One thing I really want to express was that throughout that, I stayed in the neighborhood, and my son got the opportunity to play for him, generations later. And my son turned out to be a much better athlete than I was. And the other thing is, I have the honor to live next to Coach Wagner Park, and I still live there. And one of the legacies that he's brought is that's what, I get to go out there every day and see that, and play on that field, and my son plays on that field. And now he's graduating from college, but we still have, Jim Wagner in our hearts every day of our lives. So thank you for letting me talk.
Anybody else? Well, you want to say something? Awesome.
My name is Kelly. I'm already I am Sarge's eldest granddaughter. And I'm totally making this up as I go. But all I wanted to say is that it has been so touching tonight to hear the legacy that he has left, the effect that he has had on people, because that is what he's meant. and more to my family. Probably not going to say anything that anyone hasn't already said, however, he definitely didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. But one, when you got a compliment, you knew how much you meant it. And two, when he criticized you on something, you probably deserved it. But aside from all of that, the presence that he had in my life, and my brother and my sister, and Polly and Mikey, I don't know how he spread himself so thin, but he was at everything. Everything. Even before he retired. It was either the purple Escort or the Walgreens van. But it was at every softball game, every volleyball game, every basketball game. I wasn't even that good at softball and volleyball, but he still showed up. The presence that he had in our life is something that will be with me forever. He meant so much to me. And although, actually I do want to say one more thing. Penny had mentioned, they didn't say I love you. Our side of the family, we said it a lot. My mom always told us, if you feel it, you say it. And I'm proud of that. And up until recently, we would say it without fail every time. And he would say, you bet, kid. Or right back at your kid. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, he said it, and he said it often. He said it often. We always knew it. But he said it. We had our vigil for the last couple of days. I think it was 4 days. I got to be there for 2 of them. And I said everything that I wanted to. Of course, we had the prep, but I can confidently say that he knew how much he meant to us, and he knew how much we loved him. And what a legacy he's left. What a legacy. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for being here tonight. Anybody else? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Stick around for a little longer and take a look at all the thousands of pictures that we have. There's a video that will be playing until we close up, and there's a lot of great memories here, and family, friends, extended friends of families, and we love you all, and we as his immediate family appreciate and love you back for being here, and appreciate that up close in prayer, and feel free to go as you need. Bow with me, please. Heavenly Father, again, thank you for your gift to us in the form of Jim Wagner, Sarge, Coach Jim Wagner. All of us are better people for having known you, Jim Wagner. And Lord, we credit you for placing him in this earth and helping create him along with you, Lord. We know he's looking down, hanging out with Grandma and Mike right now, and ultimately got to meet you, Lord, and that's the most important thing. And going to continue to live my life your way, Lord, in your presence and your way, so I get the opportunity to meet back up with Gramps, and he can throw me some batting practice in heaven and go out for lunch. So again, Lord, thank you for your gift of Jim Wagner, and we'll continue to honor you and continue on the legacy that he has left us all. In your name.